ladies and gentlemen. This is Women's Empowered Podcast, and I am here with was it 2L with it?
Yeah, to L with it.
Okay, so why don't we start there? What does that mean?
Okay, so my first name's Anna, but the blog started while I was in law school. And the different years in law school are like 1L, 2L, 3L. And it was kind of a play on saying to hell with it. So that's where it got started.
All right. So how'd law school go?
So the blog started after my first year in law school. I started getting randomly sick. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's stressful, which for anyone who's listening, yes, law school is stressful. But it was like a different kind of stress. Like I was having to leave class every day. And it got to the point where when I started my second year, I had to take a leave of absence. Like I was in the hospital. They didn't know what was wrong. I was like in my early 20s and they were doing colonoscopies and all this fun stuff. And I was like, So I started the blog to kind of document being young, being chronically sick, which come to find out a lot of the health issues I got were part from a trauma that happened when I was in college, but also part of like, it happens to young people, digestive disorders, whether it's Crohn's and colitis or IBS, any of that usually creeps up between 20 and 30 for a lot of people. So it started as like a health blog, and then it turned into like book reviews, and now it's more like positivity and being advocating for people that don't really bring awareness to this kind of stuff.
I got you. So what kind of chronic illness do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
So what order to tell them in? In college, I was in a car accident that someone triggered on purpose. They put roofies in my drink. I lost control of my car. Fast forward a couple years. I didn't really know what it was, but I had all these weird symptoms. Turns out it's PTSD, which you can get from anything. I mean, not like the common cold going around. But I've seen it with friends who are medical professionals and they see a traumatic accident, or first responders, military, obviously, or in this case, it was just like not a freak accident, but stuff like that. And then that caused some gastrointestinal issues. So everything from IBS to I was throwing up 6 to 7 times a day. Lost probably like 30 pounds, and then on meds gained a bunch of weight. And so they're still actually, I'm doing a new trial and they're figuring out what's up. But yeah, it's everything and anything.
I got you. PTSD, that happens so often. Like, and a few women I've already talked to, mothers that have kids with cancer, she was just talking about it, has PTSD issues. It stems from like a big trauma, and it can cause so much havoc on your body too. A lot of people don't realize that it's not just the upset and stuff. Like, it causes havoc.
Right, and that's what I didn't know. I was like, okay, the thing happened, it was sad, got over it. But your body, for me, it was several years later. Like, that happened when I was in college, fast forward 2-3 years. And slow digestive stuff. Like, I'd eat something and it would upset my stomach. But it got to the point where I was passing out when I was living by myself. So, like, that's not good. And if you put all the stuff in like a pressure cooker, like going to grad school or planning a wedding or moving, those things will exacerbate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know someone, and she had a traumatic incident happen to her kid. It like wasn't even her, and she's dealing with the fallout of that and addressing it. And the first step is really being like, oh, I should take some initiative, get some help. And it kind of starts, like for me, my GI stuff, I didn't start addressing until I found a blogger who lives in Massachusetts. And she was like, oh, I have this, this, and this. I'm like, those are my symptoms. My doctor didn't check for that. Come to find out I had, at the time, it was a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which the acronym is SIBO.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great thing about social media and online. You can overdiagnose yourself with Dr. Google. Uh,
Absolutely.
but you can also find support for stuff you wouldn't with like my friend group or anything like that.
Right? And you can kind of talk to other people. Is there anything, any communities you use or um, just to kind of help you along? And what are some of the things that you've done to help yourself through this time?
Sure. So I think probably the first place to start for anyone is with the group you already have, whether that's family or siblings, significant other, classmates. Um, because for me, it was really hard to have like health issues, and then I'd be late to stuff. I couldn't show up to things, and once my people that were in my tribe, my circle, whatever you want to call it, um, you like fill them in on stuff, you're more comfortable. It like puts you at ease. Because for a while, I wouldn't tell people I was sick. I had like a big gulp cup next to my desk in law school, so I wouldn't have to get up. He's getting up to throw up every 15 minutes. Like, not cute. Neither was the cup. But beyond that, message boards are great. There's that like for the SIBO stuff, I found a Facebook group and people posted. Um, I I guess I have to be careful when you say like find stuff online. You have to be the comb that goes through it. Like, don't be taking medical advice from someone's mom on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Right.
Um, but it's a good place. So you can look up like disease specific Facebook groups. I joined like at the gym, local gyms, just to like get active. Some hospitals have support groups for different people with different stuff. And then definitely finding like a therapist to talk to.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes for some of the people I know when they've asked like, oh, isn't therapy scary? It's good to have an outlet, whether so you're not burdening a friend with everything, and the people are trained to like PTSD is very specific in the training. Um, I did one kind of treatment for it called EMDR. It's
Mhm.
a abbreviation, but it basically helps you move through trauma, and it works great for some people. But for me, it re-triggered a lot of stuff that was really painful. Um, it triggered stuff that I hadn't even thought about, like being assaulted many years prior. And I was like, what? Nope, can't do this.
Yeah.
So just making like a list of a lot of insurances now, which when all this started, it was 7+ years ago. But like some insurance covers therapy for people completely free, and you could go every single day of the year.
Oh,
Like basic health care.
yeah, that's great that they started implementing that now. I think a lot of the nation has started to focus a little more on mental health and there's definitely a big movement now going to let people know that it's okay to get help and that therapy is important.
Right. And I think a lot of it has to do with just bringing visibility. So it's so cool to talk to you and that you're interviewing people that have stuff and aren't ashamed to talk about it. Like, yes, I've had anxiety, I've had depression, I've had the gamut of things. And I think people think admitting that's a weakness, but the reality is, oh my gosh, you could probably look at the stats. It's something astounding. And people that are like go getter adults, whether you throw kids into the mix or animals or just going to work every day, you
Mhm.
get stressed. And a good amount of stress keeps you alive. Otherwise, you'll flatline. But too much stress and you'll get sick.
Yeah, and so many people with all of these things have still accomplished such great things, and I think that's one of the things that I'm pushing with this is even though like I want to inspire people and even though something has happened or you have something, that doesn't mean to stop. Like, you know, I think sometimes we can get into like a dark place and you kind of lose sight. But interviewing all you wonderful women who have continued, even though you've found out you have MS or you have this chronic illness or your child's sick or whatever, we've still pushed through it. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more that like once you find out, so a lot of people that I work with don't know. So I finished law school. I ended up going back, but I didn't think for that year I took off I'd be able to. I was in and out of doctor's offices probably 4 to 6 times a week, different hospitalizations, different experimental treatments. Um, and I tell people I went to law school. I did 2 masters during law school. Do not recommend. um,
Yeah.
I had a gnarly breakup 2 years ago, which breakups alone can derail your life. And so anyone who thinks it's like not possible, I trained a service dog when I went back to law school. Now he's retired, so he's a couch potato. But he would, when I'd pass out in law school, go get help or open the doors or all kinds of stuff. But it's not a label like it's like the color of your hair, but it's not. You are disabled. You are like something that makes you less.
Yes. Speaking of which, I don't know if you saw a hot MS on my channel, but I actually did an interview with her, and she said something the other day that it just blew me away, that do not disable the abled, because even though a lot of people have these disabilities, they find other ways to do things. And it may not be the way that everybody else does these things, but they still manage to make it through. So, don't discredit them or think that, they're they aren't any less than any of us, you know? And I had to say that because I just thought that was so amazing. Um, and so law school and finishing your law. Let's move on to that. Like, how is it being a lawyer? Is there a lot of female lawyers especially in your
Um,
area?
it depends. I took the California bar, so I think it's one of the biggest bars in terms of quantity of people that apply for it. It has one of the lowest pass rates. I think at the time that I passed, it was 20, 25, 30% pass. Most people take it a few times. Um, so on top of it already being a hard test, being chronically sick, um, like there's a whole extra slew of things you got to do.
Yeah.
I had to get like different medications that I had to take approved. I had broken my tailbone a year or two before the test, so I had to have like a special pillow, and the pillow had to be tested. And um, but if you reach out and you let people know that you have accommodations, or like when you're talking about the hot MS, it made me think about like handicap parking spots, and how a lot of my able-bodied friends don't know what those lines are next to the parking spot.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, let me explain. There's a time in law school that I was parked and I had to take my service dog out of the back seat. There was a motorcycle parked there. And I was like, so how am I supposed to get him out? Like through the sunroof? But different things like able-bodied people wouldn't think about. Like you have to take your wheelchair out. You have to, like, there's a ramp. There's something else that you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Exactly.
that was the same thing for like applying for the bar, and it's the same thing as like an attorney just being mindful of. It's really cool, actually. I've seen quite a few attorneys in wheelchairs around the courthouse. Um, but again, you have to be mindful about having working elevators, which I know some office buildings don't have, or
Mm-hmm.
not using handicap parking spots as loading zones. All
Yeah.
the things. That's a rant for another time.
Right. um. Okay. How is it being a female lawyer? Like, I've heard a few podcasts and stuff that I've listened to, and sometimes it can be a little different, especially since law is one of those still that is male dominated sometimes. Do you find it a little difficult sometimes?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, there are other careers like that is kind of like a boys' club. Um,
Yeah.
and you see that from the way people dress. Like male attorneys will show up in loafers and pants and a jacket. Women, you'll see a range from pants and flats, which is what I usually do because I'm not trying to hit on anyone at the courthouse. But not saying people that dress differently do. But there's a lot of short skirts and high heels and impractical stuff if you're running up and down and copying and stapling. But aside from that, yeah, there was a job that I interviewed for. I think it was in law school. Um, and I ended up getting the job, and I had a client coming in, and he goes, "Oh, I'll have a coffee and this and that," thinking I was seating him as like secretary.
Oh
I
no.
was like, "No, no, no, I'm your attorney." He was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, I can get a guy if you want. Not actually, but that being young, being female, and a lot of the reality of my profession, and I think it's true for a lot of working women, is if you start a family, some people don't end up coming back to their career. So there are fewer women, and the ones who have been practicing a while, they have more to juggle, sacrifice. Um, but there are more employers now that are building like daycares in the offices. I know, like at the courthouse, we have childcare for people that have cases that day. So you can drop off your kid, they'll get watched, they won't be screaming, you're not stressing. So stuff like that.
That's cool that they're starting to integrate that. That's actually really awesome. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worked in the motorcycle industry for a while.
Oh,
So
dang.
yeah. So I totally got you. There were plenty of times when, customers were coming and asked for the mail or asked for the mail manager. I had that actually quite a few, and long and behold, I am it.
Oh
So
my gosh. And they're
yeah.
like, "Oh, I'd rather not deal with you."
No, actually it was quite funny because you always get sometimes that I always found I got that little bit of satisfaction, like, because they would at first wouldn't want to talk to you, and then they start talking to you, and you start asking them questions, and then they realize that how much you do know.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, I don't know, that was always that little tweak of satisfaction for me, like, yes, honey, I do know how to tear apart a motorcycle and put it back together, you know?
It's the same thing like you go to get your car fixed and you're like, "Oh, I do know it has tires and it's got this and that."
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
I always like talking, asking a little bit about that because it's always interesting, especially in different fields, to find out because where women are starting to come out in so many more fields, now it's slowly progressed, but like I think now we've kind of gotten a good foot in just about anything. And it's always interesting to hear like the stories and stuff because sometimes I think guys don't know, they don't get it, but it's definitely interesting to hear like those stories.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like I know some companies are coming out with like you have to have X number of women on the board, which kind of rubs me the wrong way personally because I'd want someone that's qualified regardless of gender, XYZ. But maybe that's how some companies get the foot in the door for a woman to be there. Um,
Yeah.
just because a lot of fields, I feel like you shouldn't have to put gender, you shouldn't have to put all your qualifying details, just your resume. Um, I don't know. It's like it should be more of a blind application.
Yeah, it shouldn't be looked at like that. Shouldn't be looked at. It should be looked at by what you can do, like your skills and all of
Slavery.
that. Yeah, for sure. Um, so anytime that you get like stressed or anything, is there any tips or tricks or maybe a place where you reset?
Sure. Well, I've been doing a lot of that lately. Because the last probably couple months, my health got really bad. I was in the hospital for a couple days. So I've been working on a plan to share with people about like little tips and tricks you can do to reset, whether it's positive quotes, but those can only get you so far. A lot of it has been like tactile things that you can do, whether it's putting on music or if you change your scenery, like you're upset at work, go for a walk outside. You're stressed at home, go do something else. Um, something as easy as like making a cup of tea or making a drink that you like. But always being careful, like for me, because I have like weird food issues with all the vomiting I've had, I try
Mhm.
not to like let me go indulge in a bucket full of ice cream. Um, Having healthy food on hand has been a recent change.
Yeah.
Because like when you're stressed, you'll go for whatever's there. So if you're at work, it could be the snack bin in the closet. It could be a vending machine, and just having like I always now carry a protein bar with me that I can eat.
Hmm.
So I'm not. No one likes a hangry person. Like you don't make good decisions. You don't say nice things to people. Um, but I've been working on like creating a checklist actually. And I think everyone could easily have it in their phone. Like when stressed, this is my like emergency list.
For
Um,
sure.
Texting a friend, reaching out to people. I think that's the toughest thing if you have anxiety, depression, anything up in your head or in your life that's worrying you. Just like reaching out. I saw a great meme that it was something along the lines of like, I'm sorry for the emergency SOS text I sent you, but right now I'm calm, cool, collected. Thanks for responding 3 days later. Like for the friend that you reach out to and they don't get back to you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what do you do to de-stress? Do you have like a go-to?
Well, my kids always help me de-stress, especially my 2-year-old. She's always so like funny and giggly,
They
and
do they stress you out more?
sometimes they do. Especially the older ones, sometimes they do. I've got a 14, 10, or 14, 11, and 2-year-old. So
Oh
the,
dang.
the teenagers kind of can
Yeah.
send me through the roof sometimes. But the toddler, she's a cutie.
Yeah.
And my dog, I have a dog. She was my service dog actually for a little while, my emotional service dog. She's retired. She's laying on the floor fat and happy. But she's still every once in a while when I'm upset or something, she knows and she comes over and, makes sure that I calm down and knows to let me know that I need to chill. Um, Other than that, being out in nature, fresh air, yes, for sure.
That can do wonders. Just sitting outside, getting some sun.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got 2 dogs now, and they're the best. Sometimes they're terrors because like doing this at each other. But and what's cool when you mentioned the emotional support, I feel like a lot of people don't know that that animals are super therapeutic, and
Yes.
most states. I know in California, there's no certification for ESAs. For service dogs, they go through like 9 months of training.
Hmm.
But it's not like a handicap placard you register at the DMV. Just like get your doctor to write a note. This animal helps me cope with XYZ.
Hmm.
The people that are like, I bought a vest on Amazon. I'm like, that's not legal. Like, you don't need to register them anywhere if they make you feel better. In a lot of states, you can. It's a loophole for pet rent. Not giving legal advice, but people advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have an ESA and your complex charges for pet rent, it's a cool workaround to help people as a form of therapy.
Yeah. Is there any empowered women that you look up to?
Oh, dang. Um, I feel like there are so many that choosing a few, I'd probably start with like my mom and my sister because those are closest to home. But then any of the big time celebrities that people follow. I remember like reading about Avril Lavigne and when she got diagnosed with Lyme disease. And more recently, Justin Bieber came out that he actually has that also. Um, Different celebrities that are bringing awareness to health issues are big inspirations because it's. Uh, I was writing my blog for probably 2 years before I told people about it. So for a while, it was just a little WordPress site. Um, so becoming more vocal because I see other people doing that. Um, Honestly, I think the everyday woman next to you at the grocery store, at Sprouts, or down the street, or at the office, those are inspiring because they're juggling things you don't know, whether it's a spouse and kids or I was at a nail salon the other day, and the owner was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go wash my mom's hair because she broke her arm, and then I got to go home and feed my kid." He pretended he was sleeping, but he was building Legos under his like sheets, and just like being super mom. So to me, that's a hero or someone to look up to on my end.
Absolutely. Like, that's one of the awesome things about this is we all sometimes don't realize, and that's what I'm getting from a lot of women that I ask for this, is we don't realize that to somebody else, we are an empowered person. Like, we're just trying to get through our day, doing what we need to do. But we are the empowered women. We are the ones that are doing it despite everything else that's going on. And you don't know who you would inspire.
And I've gotten that actually a few times since being more I don't know, talking more about my blog, that like you can go to school if you're sick. You can get jobs, you can achieve whatever you want. Like bad breakup, it was horrible. I documented the crap out of it, and then found someone else that like I don't know, made all of that bad seem valuable. That it sucks if you have cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, whatever, even if you don't have health issues. Like, I've had friends who have had family issues and just internal struggles, like career struggles. And if you just, like, I don't know, take a minute to step back, it's like the people next to you can inspire you. That's why I like going to the gym because when my ass gives up and the person next to me is still running, I'm like, "Ah, I guess I should keep trying."
Absolutely. Is there any words of advice for the younger generation that you would give?
Words of advice. Anything in particular?
No, just anything that you would tell maybe the younger you.
Well, I'd probably start with you're gonna get hurt, but skin knees do get better. Um, I don't know, being proactive about what I wanted and going after it. Like, and when I first went to college, I was like, I want to go to med school. I want to be a doctor. And then I took chemistry and math, and I was like, um, later, I ended up like getting an MBA, so I had to do a lot of math. Um, but just like I would probably tell her that it'll be okay. That because when I was little, I was super tiny. I got teased about my height, got teased about my weight. Um, the opposite of like all the fat shaming that's going on in social media these days. There's a lot of skinny shaming in the 90s. Um, like
Absolutely. I
skinny
got the
girls,
same thing.
rib bones, all the things. Eat a hamburger kind of stuff. Um, but when you're little, you don't see the microcosm you're living in, that the 12 classmates, the 30 classmates you have aren't the whole wide world. And then for me, my shocking point, or like where I realized that I had room to expand was going to college. And not everyone needs to go to college to realize that. The first job you get, anything outside of your mom, dad, sister, brother, like three best friends from the street, like I wish more kids were confident in who they were and what they wanted to do, whether that's coming out of the closet or it's taking the job that like more male nail technicians or more female football players. I don't know. But like going after, I remember a girl growing up and she was so upset there wasn't a female football team at our high school, but there was like male and female lacrosse, there was male and female volleyball. She's like, why isn't there football? And the coach was like, well, it's something along the lines of it's a contact sport and girls will cry. And she's like, okay, then put me on the boys team. And long story short, she got on the boys team until they went to CIF, and then it was like, you can't play. But
Yeah,
yeah, probably something along those lines, that like going after whatever you want, however you can get there.
absolutely. It's becoming more and more popular. Like, I've seen quite a few girls now that have made it onto like high school teams and stuff. I've seen like news articles and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah, it was definitely, I was um in the 90s. I graduated in '04, and there really wasn't any football teams or anything like that. They had the Powder Puffs,
Yep. Yep.
like, yeah, which I always thought was funny because I don't know, like me and my friends in PE, it was always a bet to see how much harder we could play the game that they were teaching us.
Oh,
so,
and
so we
you'll
kind
find
of,
that when you get older, like female attorneys trying to prove male attorneys that they can keep and get better clients, whatever it may be.
yes,
Like make more money, this and I mean, pay gaps and all that. Hopefully in the future, that's something of the past.
right? I mean, we may get emotional, we may cry, but usually it's just because we're pissed off and we're trying not to hurt you.
Yeah, less mansplaining about things, which working in a male industry, it's like I do a lot of that to other women. I'm like, oh no, no, no.
Yeah. Which it happens, we all got to kind of learn to live with each other, and we're all, slowly progressing and learning how to deal with each other, because that's something we got to learn too. If we're working with male and female, sometimes we got to learn how to just collaborate.
And the biggest thing with that, I was actually watching a documentary last night with Elijah Schlesinger, I think is her name.
Oh, I love that lady.
Like, she's incredible, but she just did a Netflix special on weddings and all that jazz.
Yes.
And there's a part where she goes, like, women just need to be nice to other women. Like, if guys don't like something, they're like, I don't like his politics. I don't like the way he looks. We duked it out in the corner and we're good.
Yeah.
For women, it's just like, I want to compete and be better than you. Like, I've seen it a lot with like when people get engaged and their weddings and bridal parties, just because I'm like in the heaps of wedding planning right now myself. But like,
Oh, congratulations.
thanks. But like, support your girlfriends if they want to go after something crazy, if they want to date someone that you're just like, meh, like, support them until they need you to help them get back up.
Right? Exactly. And that's just absolutely important, and we need to work on that. Like, as females, we need to work on, letting them be their own people. They are their own people. And then just being there for them. And you know it's definitely something we need to learn how to do. Did you see all of her other specials? Did you take a look at those ones too?
I've been following her, oh dang, probably the last decade or so. I actually met her at a comedy club many years ago, back when she used to do bits with Blanche, her
Yeah.
dog.
uh
And when she did the meet and greet, she was like holding Blanche like this. And she's like, do you want to pet her? Do you want to hold her? There's a picture somewhere on the internet with her. But
yeah.
that like brutal honesty, I think it's more a female thing that we get hurt easily and ruminate over things while guys are like, yeah, he said something shitty, whatever. Or don't read into it.
Yeah.
We could use more of that. More tough skin, more testosterone. I don't know.
I think women can just use more of opening our mouths too, because I think sometimes we do hold stuff back.
Yeah.
Especially around men. Sometimes we can hold stuff back because it's, I don't know, at least for me, I think it was kind of like instilled in me young that, women should be, the dainty, yes, yes. And
Thinking about the like
yeah.
when your significant other asks you, "Oh, are you hungry?" and you're like, "No," and then he orders fries and you're like eating half of them that you should have spoken up, and maybe
Yeah.
you don't get a thoughtful spouse who will order 2 fries knowing that you're a fry hoarder. Or like, is something wrong? No. Okay. Instead, rephrase that. Yes, something's wrong, and this is why.
Yes.
Instead of letting the dishes pile up for a month, you address it the first time. All communication things people could. This is why people can use therapy. Big
Yes.
plug for that.
Absolutely. Like, there's so many things all over the place everybody could learn. Um, but definitely, is there a time that you felt most empowered that you can think of?
I think graduating from law school was a big one because for a decently long time, I didn't know if I'd even go back.
Yeah.
And it was where it fell in my timeline of things, it was a couple months after this gnarly long-term breakup, a couple months into a new relationship, about to take the bar exam, which for people that haven't taken law school or gone to law school, it's like 8 hours a day for 2 months, every single day, no holidays, listening to these boring videos on dry stuff, all good stuff, but like, nah. um,
It's lost. So
yeah,
yeah.
um, and I think like getting that diploma and being done, and then fast forward, passing the bar, um, and every day I go to my job and like helping people solve their problems when they walk away. I think I put it in an Instagram post the other day. Like I got that warm, tingly feeling that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't know, like if people are listening, like if you're religious, if you're not religious, finding purpose in life outside of like another person or children or whatever, just having like your sphere of you exist for this reason is, it's why I started the blog. It's why I talk to people about my story to get them kickstarted, whatever their journey may be. Addiction, trauma, you can get through it. You just have to want that for yourself.
You have to find that light at the end of the tunnel.
Shit, yeah. Oh my gosh. Sometimes it's hard, and I got a card the other day um, that was along the lines, and it said, I've got a flashlight and a pack of batteries for you. And it was just like being there for people who are important to you and just shooting them a text and, hey, you doing okay? And finding people that'll do that for you too. Like, hey, can you check in on me? Can you like circle back, put a reminder in your phone? I've done that a ton.
Absolutely, I think that's important. We all get busy, but and I'm like the worst at it, absolute worst at it. Like I've been working consciously on making this a point. And it's kind of cool, like as I'm building this podcast, it's bringing light, and I'm growing a little bit too, and realizing, things like this where, just simply reaching out to people and talking to people and, you know, checking in with them, not waiting for them to check in on you, or, you know, taking those moments for yourself to, build your friendships and take that time. That's definitely important.
And I think a lot of people forget that, whether it's a friendship, a family member, whatever, that unless you're intentional on your end, and sure, there are friendships that you'll put effort in and they don't reciprocate and they fade away, and that's okay. But I've had friends and they're like, oh, I thought you were super busy, so I didn't reach out. And I was like, I thought the same. So then we'll go a period of time not seeing each other and being like, where are you? Um, and so just taking that accountability, and on a personal level, like self-care, such a big advocate of it. I feel like people don't do it enough. Whether it's something as simple as having a glass of water when you wake up,
Mhm.
because dang, I was so dehydrated for a test I had the other day. They were like, well, I don't need to get into the grisly details. There's a cute picture of my arm on Instagram about a blood draw that went wrong. Um, but just like taking that time to make your bed, to brush your teeth, to do a meditation, a yoga pose. Like for me, I'm the same way. I'll put it off. I'll have something else. I'll be rushed. Something that I've got coming up to share is like overnight oats, super easy. Like if people are into easy breakfast, like I mentioned, having healthy snacks, it's something I've been doing probably the last couple weeks. The night before, you set it all up, put it in the fridge, take it to go. And that's made a huge difference of like, I'm not hungry in the morning, like upset, I can't find anything to eat.
Mhm.
Um, it's a nice way if you want to make double portions for kids, spouse, whatever. Um, and just being intentional about like, this is my routine. I'm going to stick to it. I feel better when I stick to it, rather than a frazzled mess in the morning that's just like, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Is there an inspirational quote that you use in hard times?
There's one I really like by Thomas Carlyle, that he said, no pressure, no diamonds. because how diamonds are made is they're put under extreme pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And lately I'm constantly a work in progress. Not by someone who said it famous, but like if you're dealing with something, you're never going to be like dealing with anxiety for me is a lifelong thing. Some days are better than others. My GI issues, some days are great, and some days I don't leave the house. And that's okay. As long as you're keeping that light in mind and working towards like, um, for me, like having a roadmap of this is what I need to do. So in January, I was like, I'm going to reach out to these 3 doctors. So I reached out to them and then created plans, which I think a lot of people could do. I did that with school. This is the end goal of what I want. How do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, those would probably be the 2 quotes that I'm moving, ebbing and flowing between right now. Do you have
Right.
any inspirational quotes that you live by?
There's one that I've kind of held on to for basically since high school, and it's wisdom speaks, but knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. And that just kind of, I use that to remind myself you don't always have to say something, and kind of just like hold it in and think about it for a second, because sometimes you can just let everything fly out and it's not, what needs to be done.
Yeah, sometimes listening's a better tool than talking, and that's why I like grabbed a piece of paper to write down stuff because like I'm so
Yeah,
excited to share my story and to talk with you, and I'm so glad you reached out like on a whim. Another good one would be like the answer's always no if you don't ask. Whether
yes,
that's a job, a cute person you want to talk to, like whatever it may be. Um,
yeah.
I feel like too many people are their own worst obstacle. Like you'll be like, "Oh, I'm not good enough for that. I'm not applying. I can't do that." Like try out for the things, and even if you quote fail, you'll have a good story.
Absolutely. And then not only that, but by the multiple trying, and I can absolutely contest to this because I have like a huge social anxiety, but by constantly putting yourself out there and just kind of working it in, you kind of start to lose that a little bit and it gets better.
Yeah,
And the more you talk to people and the more you push yourself, it gets better.
I couldn't agree more. Or yeah, for people that have social anxieties, go to a bar or if you drink alcohol. If you don't go to a bar. But like coffee shops, wherever you can interact with like a bartender or a person behind the bakery counter because they're not going to be mean to you usually.
Yes.
Sometimes
Depends on if you go to the right one.
yeah, that's a good place to start and then you can like try going to events by yourself or just like that like putting your toe in the pond kind of thing.
Yes.
And if you try it enough times, you'll get comfortable with it, like going to the gym by yourself. I know a lot of people are intimidated by that or working out and don't know where to start. Like it also starts with asking for help. You can like I didn't know where to go. I was exhausted with my like traditional doctors, like at the hospitals and whatnot.
Mhm.
And I wanted to try alternative medicine. So I asked a friend, and she actually happened to be going to see a doctor in the area that did alternative stuff. Um, and lo and behold, the doctor is figuring out stuff that other doctors couldn't figure out.
Yes.
So it's just like asking around because you never know what nugget the people in your lives, social media posting, like, hey, does anyone else have input on this? Or I feel like that's the less scary way to do it.
Well, yeah, social media kind of like takes away that personal, I guess, bubble.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, definitely use so many women that I've talked to use community.
yeah.
That's their big thing, and it's definitely something that needs to be done, and that's one of the things I'm trying to build with this. So thank you for saying yes and being on my podcast.
Of course.
All right. You have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later.